We had 3 months to get 150 investors over the line to be compliant. We spent tens of thousands of dollars on consultants, lawyers, accountants before we even knew what we were going to do.
What were some blind spots that you found that you had to learn along the way? Because this was something new to you.
You need to be believing in it more than anybody else. And if you're not willing to have some skin in the game and put your reputation and work and everything on the line for this, how is anyone going to want to invest in you? You can't fast track building relationships or trust. You need to go get the technical advice. You need to pay for the best advice possible as well. You need to know what you're doing. You need to have a plan and a strategy and be able to articulate it very clearly. But if you don't have the relationship, it is going to be significantly harder to be able to execute on that.
Throughout this journey of raising capital, getting exposed to the legal side of it, what surprised you the most?
There's a huge level of responsibility on you as the capital raiser. You need to take it seriously. And all these capital raising panels and courses, and all they're talking about is the sales part. Like, sales are great, but as soon as you slow down, so does your income and so does your net worth growth. I got very sick. I was pretty well bedridden for a couple of years almost. And so my why around real estate today, and really what changed then, was if it wasn't for my real estate, I would have had nothing to fall back on. There was no security blanket. Like, we've had lots of stumbling blocks along the way and lots of hard times, and we've had lots of good times and everything in between, right? But really how we got to where I am today is, or how I got there, let's say, is...
Natasha didn't start with a mentor, but she watched her mom walk clients through mortgages, and something clicked. She made more in real estate than in a full-time job. She became bedridden, and the properties she'd bought had become her safety net. She's not just building wealth. She's building something that she can fall back on, and she's helping others do the same. Now, what stood out to me wasn't just the results, but how she achieved them, who she works with, what she says yes to, and what she no longer tolerates. This isn't about shortcuts or hype. It's about trust, structure, and long-term thinking. Let's get into it. Natasha, I want to welcome you to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
No, I'm excited. I'm excited to kick in and dive in. So, can you let's go back to the beginning. Can you tell us what first drew you into real estate and how your journey sort of unfolded from there?
Yeah, sure. I had a very kind of country lifestyle. I grew up outside of the city, very sheltered. I had an amazing childhood, rode horses, and did a lot of awesome things as a family. But as I got older, of course, you kind of want to start getting into the city and get out there. So as soon as I was done high school, graduated, wanted to move into the city. And so I was just around 18. And my mom was a banker at Scotiabank, and she did a lot of mortgages and investments, of course, and worked with a lot of high net worth people. And I remember her really sitting me down at the table and showing me how a mortgage works, and how, because I was excited to go rent this property and, move into town. And she said, this is what you're doing. You're paying this individual's mortgage down for them, right? And she kind of showed me.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate enough that they helped me actually buy my first property at the time. And after that, I made a little bit of money on that first property and kind of got little light bulbs going off. But I was going through university, got my degree in marketing, and was working in the oil and gas sector all through university. But I bought and sold several properties through that time, and had kind of made more money doing that than my almost full-time job at the time. I mean, I was lucky. I got very lucky. It was a great time. I did not have a network or anyone teaching me really, other than an interest. My dad's family business is in construction, so I was very comfortable with job site. My first couple jobs were cleaning up job sites, cutting siding, running up and down the ladders. Like, I had a very diverse sort of experience at this time. And so I was very comfortable in some of these scenarios where you could find opportunities. And so as soon as I got out of university, I did not want to go back to the corporate environment. I really did not want to do the 9-to-5 thing downtown, commuting and all of that stuff. I just did not like it. And so I got my real estate license right out the gate. And at the time, no one was really specializing. There was no niche in investment real estate. And so, but that's what I knew I wanted to do from day one at that point. So that's how I got started.
Your mom and your dad, were they in real estate prior? Were they investing as well?
Not really. They have since then, but it was more, she worked with a lot of high net worth people. She knew a lot of people had real estate,
Hmm.
and she just didn't like the
Yeah.
idea of me going to rent and paying someone else's mortgage. It was either stay at home or go
Yeah.
buy. It wasn't necessarily like this was going to be a rental property. It was more just if you're gonna live somewhere, you may as well be paying down your own debt kind of idea, right? And then my dad
Yeah.
still is today, in the construction industry, and they do exterior finishes for builders here in Calgary, so roofing, siding, that kind of thing. And so they work a lot together. My mom ended up retiring from the bank many years ago, and kind of helped grow the business with my dad. But that really started those first few light bulb moments that kind of really led me where I am today.
Oh, 100%. Okay, so they helped you get that first property, and was that a rental, or was that like a primary
It
residence
was a
just for you to
primary
live in?
residence, but it was a new construction. So it was not
Got it.
built when we did the contract. So we kind of got to go through the whole process start to finish. And of course, during that time, lucky me, we were in an appreciating market, which I didn't even think about that.
Yes.
But I was
Yeah.
luck, right, at that time. And then once that was done, I didn't like living out in the suburbs. I wanted to be downtown. I was like a kid. So I ended up
Yeah.
selling that property, made a little bit of money, and at the time, it was, much easier to get a mortgage than it is today. And I actually
Yeah.
bought a condo that I did very well on. That was in a condo conversion. They were doing conversions from apartment buildings, and I approached the builder developer and asked if I could help with the sales. Didn't I had no experience on sales, but he helped me, or he allowed me to kind of work in the show suite that they had, and I got a very good deal. It was the first person to move into that building and made an absolute killing on that for someone in their early 20s. We're talking about a couple $100,000, and was
Yeah.
like, okay, I love real estate. And I was doing that, after either school or work as well. And so, yeah, that's really kind of how I got started.
Got it. Okay. Okay. Now I'm really intrigued to see how
Yeah.
things unfold and how things progress from there. So it's a pretty unique story as well. It's not like, some of the typical ones you'll hear like, hey, I found this workshop, this boot camp, this seminar, went there and, got all hyped up on the power of real estate and then got going with the help of coaches and stuff. You sort of just your parents were like, hey, your mom noticed there's some similarities between these successful people, like my mentor says, success leaves clues, and you sort of just went that way. And it seems like you had a relatively decent amount of conviction to just go at it without having a mentor or a coach that's actually doing this. So, that's pretty impressive in itself. But how did things unfold from there? So you got a little bit on of like some of it luck with it being in an appreciation market, like a little bit of the taste on the power of real estate, and
Yes.
that just kept you going. And so what did the next transaction look like?
Yeah. So that definitely piqued my interest, and where things really started to shift in terms of my mindset as well. So going into the time I was coming out of university, I actually got quite sick. I was not well, and my husband at the time, well, we weren't married, but we were dating. He had his own kind of a small portfolio of rental properties. I had a few of my own, and what really shifted my kind of mindset around what my purpose was here was, I got very sick. I was very sick with chronic endometriosis and fibromyalgia, and I was pretty well bedridden for a couple of years almost. And so my why around real estate today, and really what changed then, was if it wasn't for my real estate, I would have had nothing to fall back on. There was no security blanket when you're, working sort of 9 to 5 job. You have no assets. Like, what's going to catch you when you fall? And so those assets have really been our security blanket over the years, and have allowed us to take maybe other risks at times that are a bit more risky than real estate. I know you have other interests as well, and so the real estate has kind of been that security blanket for us. And I hope
Yeah.
I never have to go back there again in terms of that. But if I do, I know I can take the time and step back because of the real estate that really built that security blanket for us.
I've spoken to many people that have had instances similar to that, have had health scares or big life events happen earlier on that sort of gave them a powerful why. And, at the time, it's not probably, it's scary and there's a lot going on. But when you look back at it, there's there's a blessing behind all of that to really drive you to take action and set yourself up to prevent something happening in the future where you're in a situation and it's like, I've spent all my years working this 9 to 5, and now I'm kind of stuck in a situation where financially I'm not able to take care of myself.
Yeah.
So it's great that you're able to see that earlier on. Now I'm pretty intrigued because your husband right now, who was your boyfriend at the time,
Mhm.
also a real estate investor.
Yeah.
When was that like a similar interest and you guys found each other that way? Did you start at what point did you decide, you know what, like real estate's pretty cool. I actually want to take this a lot more seriously and maybe start networking, meeting with other investors and building up my network and my knowledge base as well. When did that happen?
Yeah, I mean, going back to, let's say, early 2000s, 2010s, like, there wasn't nearly the networks like there is now, right? It was really hard
Oh
to
yeah.
actually find other people doing things. So I would
Yeah.
say I honestly did not take the network building component seriously or start really building that probably not till 2015, 2014, in that kind of range. So up until that point, it was kind of like we were just doing our own thing, but I was really taking that kind of mission of the security towards helping my clients. That was kind of what I bring to the
Yes.
table for them. But in terms of that like, network and how can I, learn, it just wasn't nearly as accessible then. So 2015, I joined Rain, which I know is a lot of people's story. The real estate
Yeah.
network has brought a lot of people together. I still do a lot of stuff with Patrick and Rain and absolutely love that community. But that was like opened my eyes in terms of, we had our projects that we've been working on. We've built infills, we've done, student rentals, we've done a lot of different things over the years, but that room and the networking was really the more of the like, okay, there isn't just a career here, but there's more of like an impact here. And I have so much to
Yeah.
learn from all of these people. And I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know what was possible then. And I still like to think about it like that, right? Like we don't know, we don't know yet. And meeting people and networking and seeing what other people are doing, surrounding yourself with people doing things maybe that you haven't even thought of or bigger than you want to, really changed my perspective. So it was about 2015 I had a major shift of like, okay, I want to take all this and do something more intentional with it in this type of actual community.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, there's so much value in really building those relationships with other people who are doing what you want to do or doing what you're currently doing. It's not only a support network, but it if you build the right relationships, it pays in dividends and ROI far beyond anything else. Now, so I'm curious. Okay, so you and your boyfriend at the time, you both real estate investors. When you met him, was he already investing in real estate, or did
Yes, he was.
did you guys influence each other though?
Yeah, he actually was. That was something obviously that I was very attracted to. He was interested in real estate. He was managing all of his own assets as well. So we had that in common. Funny enough, we have a very interesting sort of, love story. We actually met when we were teenagers, originally
Yeah.
13, 14, but we didn't start dating until about 10 years after that. So we had similar friend groups and that kind of thing. But I was the country girl. He was definitely the city boy, living downtown
Yeah.
Calgary, very different lifestyle than me. And so I just felt like at the time we were kind of worlds apart. But later on, there was just so much crossover. And what I've always kind of respected in Rodney too is he has always allowed me to kind of and probably even encouraged me to dream bigger than I would have ever thought. And
Yeah.
that is a rare thing, to not try to sort of compete with each other in some way, or like we really truly are a team. And he has encouraged me and supported me really every single step of the way. And I knew at some point it's kind of my sales career, which I still do, but I love being a realtor. I love sales and all of that, but you can't slow down in the same way, if there's no security blanket, right? Like sales are great, but
Yeah.
as soon as you slow down, so does your income and so does your net worth growth and everything like that. So I wanted to kind of solve all those things at the same time. So it's very much a family business. We do a lot together. Um, But I still have kind of, a long way to go as well. Like we've done a lot, but still have a long way to go.
100%, 100%. There's a lot that you touched on there, but if if we just open up, so you and your boyfriend met, you obviously, firstly, I feel like it's probably the most important decision that anybody makes is the
Mm,
partner that they choose,
true.
right?
Yeah.
It impacts everything that you do and how you do it. And having someone who's firstly doing what you do is a bonus. It's not a requirement, but I think the most important thing is someone who's supportive and a partner that wants to see you become the best version of yourself and support you in that journey is paramount. It's so important, right? You're gonna come across so many challenges and difficulties. The last thing you need is for that to be in your household and to be like the voice that you're constantly hearing. So I love the fact that you mentioned that, because I think for people who are very early on in their life journey who maybe haven't found their partner yet, it's a key thing to consider. And they don't have to be interested in real estate or investing or any of those things, but you need to find someone who's going to support you and who shares a similar vision for where you guys wanna
True.
what you want to build up to as a unit and as a family. So I love that. Okay, so you guys meet, you fall in love, you both invest in, you both have like a shared vision for where you want things to go. How did things progress for you, like just moving forward? Where you're out in Calgary, where did you start investing, and when did you decide to branch out to other marketplaces as well? What did that look like?
So, I got my real estate license, oh gosh, about 18 years ago now. And so we had our own investments together, but Rodney also has his own business. He's a classically French trained chef. He's
Oh
in the
wow.
music business as well when it comes to helping artists make an actual business out of their art. And then a few years ago, we started WellShare, which is a private REIT here in Calgary, where we're actually working together. But that was the first project that we were like formally working together. But what we've always had is this kind of um, continuous push for self-improvement, for improvement for our
Yeah.
kids, and that growth. Like how can we be better, do better, grow better. That doesn't mean it's easy, right? Like we've had lots of stumbling
100%.
blocks along the way and lots of hard times, and we've had lots of good times and everything in between, right? The entire entrepreneur journey. But really, how we got to where I am today is, or how I got there, let's say, is so I spent really 2015 is when, like I said, I really started to go larger with terms of like wanting to meet other people and getting out in the space. And then my sales career as a investment focused realtor really definitely started to take a upwards trajectory. So
Yeah.
rewind, 4 or 5 years ago, I had some of the top kind of selling years of my career. I, cracked $1 million in commission in 1 year. That was a huge milestone I was trying to hit. But I always had in the back of my mind, I don't want to go make all this money and then not do something else with it. So what I did with that
Yes.
was that bought me a runway to kind of cross over everything I'd been doing to try to build something else. And that bought me about a 2 year runway for us to keep our life going and household going and kids going and to start a new business. And so that's when WellShare REIT kind of came into. We didn't know it was WellShare at the time, but I knew I wanted to step into the multifamily space and also kind of share this message of wanting to build security and just financial intention for more Canadians. That was really the goal, and to make it as accessible as possible. And so that was the things that were important to us. We didn't know all the things we didn't know yet in terms of structure and what we need
Yeah.
to do, but that really started that back in 2022. So that runway bought me the time to honestly do that, and I'm really glad I didn't waste it, because you're in sales. You don't get those years don't just keep repeating continuously. They're not promised. So that was really the vision. So today where I'm at is I have my real estate team, which I have a partner in, and she's fantastic, Andrea Tessier. She really helps me with everything on that side. We do commercial, residential, and property management on the team. And then I'm also
Love
CEO
it.
and co-founder of WellShare REIT, where we are buying multifamily assets here in Alberta, and people can invest with as little as $5,000 or more. So those are the two kind of hats I'm wearing on a daily basis today.
Got it. Now, one thing I want to dive into is 'cause it's probably one of the biggest questions that I get asked by real estate investors are really looking to start scaling is the capital side of
Yes.
things, right? Raising capital, it's a big one. So how did that look like? I mean, going with a REIT, like getting into that, what was some blind spots that you found that you had to learn along the way? Because this was something new to you,
Oh,
right?
definitely. And so the first sort of raising capital though was joint ventures. I had done joint ventures
100%.
before
Yeah.
that, probably about a half dozen or so between infill builds that we did, some reno projects, secondary suites, those kinds of things. And so it was a much bigger idea, but I had at least built some comfort in the value proposition I could provide. Because I'm the type of person that it's like if I really don't, I have to really believe I can do this or feel comfortable that I'm okay with the ask or the value. And so I kind of slowly step my way up there, right? Um, but with the raising capital thing, I think it's much harder than people think. You know, as I just said, I started building this network 10 years ago in terms of intentionally get out there. I'm at so many events. I'm constantly somewhere, constantly going to meet new people. And that is what it takes. And people will invest uh, in you more than anything else. That is like, I think people say that, but there's no fast track to that. You can't fast track building relationships or trust. You can start being intentional about it. But so what I tell people is, even if you think you might want to start doing that in 5 years from now, 10 years from now, start building a network today. It is
Now,
never too
yeah.
it is never too soon.
100%. Yeah, and I love what you mentioned there is people invest in you. I think a lot of real estate investors potentially get it a little backwards initially is they need to find like the key ideal unicorn property to find the investor, right? Chicken and the egg. If I have a good deal, I'll get an investor, you know?
Yeah, and there's always this, chicken and egg thing. I mean, it's kind of one of those things. What works for someone else might not work for you. Now, you do need to have the deal. You need to have all the answers. You need to know what you're doing. You need to have a plan and a strategy and be able to articulate it very clearly. But if you don't have the relationship, it is going to be significantly harder to be able to execute on that. So, a really fun story of WellShare is when you first start a fund like this, and if you want to be using registered funds like we did, the structure requires you to have 150 investors by March 31st of the calendar year. And we had 3 months to get 150 investors over the line to be compliant. And I don't want to repeat those 3 months. We did it and more, right? I think we were like closer to 150, 170. So we had some extras in there just in case. But like that's really hard to do if you just don't have a network built, right? Like you have to build this over time, and it kind of goes on top of each other. So that was a really fun time. And getting 150 people to do anything is very difficult. Never mind, compliance, paperwork, and money, and all of this stuff. So yeah, it was a real fun journey, but it was a test too, right?
100%. No, yeah, and that's the thing. Like anyone listening is like, you can't just go out there and pull that off. Like when you're building these
No.
relationships, it's like planting seeds.
Yes.
You got to water them, you got to nourish them, you got to build on that relationship. Because you're 100% right. You can have a deal and find an investor, but they're all looking at you. Like, do they know you? Do they feel that you're competent enough to handle their money? Do they feel that you're ethical enough that you're not going to take this and go away on vacation? And do they like you? Do they feel like it's going to be a good relationship? Do you guys have a good fit? Do you have a shared vision? Like, how do you do things? They kind of need to know and like you as well, beyond just giving you their money because it's a good deal. But that aside, like there's a lot of runway and work leading up to what you did to pull off what you did. And so building onto those relationships, building that aside, going to networking events, shaking hands, trying to add value to as many people as you can, and being intentional about your networking versus just randomly socializing.
Sure.
That aside, let's assume someone has all of that locked down. They're building on their social skills. They say, because there's a level of sales skills that go into that as well. Their sales skills, all of that aside, let's say they're doing all of those fundamentals really well. What would you say you needed? What were some things you did to actually pull this off?
Yeah. So the actual tangible part of it, right? Speaking at a few events, I always tell people you need to be okay to spend money as well. We spent tens of thousands of dollars on consultants, lawyers, accountants before we even knew what we were going to do. Like, you have to be committed that you are going ahead with this. It's not like, oh, I'm going to go find all these
Yes.
people, then I'm going to go spend money on lawyers and accountants and figure out what I actually want to do. No, you need to build it, and then they will come. You can't have them come and not be built yet. So
Exactly.
you do need to invest in yourself, and I do think that is where a lot of people get stuck. It's very different when you're putting that 20 grand out, right? It's very different to
Yeah.
paying that lawyer for their time. But if you are not willing to spend money on this, in my opinion, you're not ready. Uh,
You can do it.
be,
Yeah.
be, because you need to be believing in it more than anybody else. And if you're not willing to have some skin in the game and put your reputation and work and everything on the line for this, how is anyone going to want to invest in you? So paying for that good advice, all these groups are great and stuff, but if you're not a securities lawyer, if you're not talking to a securities lawyer, they don't know securities law inside out and backwards. And so that's a very
Yes.
good example of, like, you need to go get the technical advice. You need to pay for the best advice possible as well. Don't go for the cheapest option. It's like on sale sushi. You don't want on sale sushi. No, it's similar to that, right? Or, like
Yeah.
haircuts from someone who can't cut their own hair. Like, you want to go to someone who, so we actually
Yes.
went to the team who we knew had actually built the some of the largest funds in Canada, right? So they already had a track record of helping other
Yeah.
funds get off the ground. And so that was really, really important. And then you got to learn everything that they teach you, inside out and backwards as well. Because you're going to need to speak on it. You're going to need to learn what you can and cannot say, because you can't say everything. You need to be careful. There's laws here. And I think, we've seen a lot of bad news in the last few years here in
Yeah.
kind of private lending world. And almost all those examples, at least that I've dove into in terms of documents, I think it was just, go big and fast real quick, and mistakes happen. You're not taking the time to really understand what you're doing and building inside out and backwards. So, I'm intentionally trying to think about this company as something decades down the road, not here right now today.
That is so powerful. And for anyone who's looking at that as a path to pursue, you've obviously invested in real estate already, so you know the value of a power team. And now it's building a power team that's going to support you for that next step and that next level, as opposed to trying to know everything yourself. And now you're working on a much larger scale. So there's a lot more that can go wrong, and there's a lot more accountability that goes into it, because you're dealing with a lot of people's money.
Yes.
And yeah, so no, I love the fact that you highlighted that, because it's so true, and you get what you pay for oftentimes. So just focusing on the price is not the way to go about it.
No.
You need to focus on the value that you're going to get from that. So I'm curious though, for someone listening saying, "Hey, this makes a lot of sense. I feel like I've been doing this for long enough that I've got the experience to do this responsibly. I've got the network and the relationships to be able to raise the capital. What's the barrier of entry? How much should I have, and what's the runway to all of this?"
Like, to build something like this? For
Yeah.
sure. You're talking about multiple six figures to get going. Uh, just to check all the boxes. There's a couple different paths if you want to go the fund route. There's two types of funds out there. Like, generally speaking, there's more, but they kind of two ways. Are you can work with accredited investors only,
Yeah.
and have a structure that is a little more limited. So you're only going to be working with higher net worth individuals, investing larger sums of money. We did not want to do that. We wanted to be accessible to as many people as possible. So we still have our higher net worth investors, don't get me wrong, but we also want the average Canadian as much as possible to have access to what we're doing. And so
Yeah.
if you want to raise capital from non-accredited investors or eligible investors, which fits a much wider audience in this country, then you need to have an offering
Yes.
memorandum on top of your corporate structure. So the offering memorandum will add another, chunk of money there on top of that to be able to do. So it depends, what you're trying to do. you can use structures like this for developments, for storage, for buy and hold. It's a wide umbrella of what you can do here. So you kind of got to get clear on your vision, what you're trying to do, then be relaying that to your team who's going to help you on the security side in terms of what structure makes sense, because and how many people, like we're thinking about tens of thousands of people, like that's how many people we want in our network one day, right now we're just over a
Yeah.
few hundred, but we want it to be as kind of large as possible. And so we had to check all those boxes, so we had to do all the steps and all the things, and we are also need to be compliant with not just the CRA, but Securities Commission, in each and every province has their own Securities Commission as well. So when you're thinking about raising
Yeah.
capital, if you're going to have investors come from Ontario or BC or Alberta or wherever, you need to also be compliant with the local securities laws, not just the ones in your province. It matters where they live, not where you live. So that was another thing that I don't know if folks think about. And the last thing I'll say about that too is, like, just because you're not doing the big fund, if say you're just doing smaller raises, um, securities laws still apply.
Yeah.
They
Oh,
still apply. So you can't. So I think either way, you need to spend some time in this space. Even if you're planning to have just a handful of investors, you need to learn who is um, who is your investor and who are you allowed to be working with, and what is suitable for them, because it is your responsibility, if you are raising the money, to make sure you're thinking about suitability, that you're not letting some student put in their $100,000 inheritance into a super high risk land development deal that could definitely go sideways. Like that is not suitable for that
yeah.
individual. So that is, there's a huge level of responsibility on you as a capital raiser. You need to take it seriously. And I think the bad news stories we've had, that's what I hope we can learn from. And I never hear
Yeah.
the word suitability enough. Everywhere I go, I don't hear that word enough. And all these capital raising panels and courses, and no one is talking. All they're talking about is the sales part. You need to be thinking about the suitability part. So yeah, sorry, I'll end my rant there.
No, it's truly a great point though.
Yeah.
I'm curious because you mentioned quite a bit there, but throughout this journey of raising capital, whether it was initially just with JV partners or getting into an actual fund, what what are like getting exposed to the legal side of it, what surprised you the most?
Um, that's a good question. I mean, I think what surprised me the most was not necessarily anything technical, like I knew would be super technical, but just the volume of technicality to go through. We
Mm,
talked about an offering
yeah.
memorandum. I mean, our first draft was over 100 pages, in tiny font, and it is our responsibility to go through everything. It took us months to get through that OM and have it how we want it, and it's truly reflective. So it is very detailed. There is just a lot in there, but so that was kind of a big surprise. And when, they say, oh, we could get this done in a month. No, like it's taking you 3 months. So it's a big undertaking, much larger than I could have possibly foreseen, which is why we ended up with only the 3 months to get the 150s. It just took a lot. But what kind of surprised me the most was once I started diving into this was, and I'd been exposed to a lot of other people doing, similar things, raising a lot of capital, seemingly doing really large things. Was once I learned what I learned was, unfortunately, how many people were not taking the time to necessarily learn the same things.
Yeah.
Or were just very, loosey goosey with people's money. Like I it's shocking. It's really, really shocking. And the trust that people have, like, yes, we want to talk about trust, but just that how loose it got out there in terms of promissory notes, no secured lending, all of that stuff. And um once I learned what I learned, I was like, holy, like this is so huge in terms of what's maybe not being done correctly. So that was probably my largest, like, wow.
No, this is actually, you were literally so almost like reading my mind on like the question I was going to ask you next. Because I was going to say, which industry practices concern you the most? Because maybe they appear to be compliant, but ultimately misalign incentives or undermine investor protection. Now you've kind of already alluded to a lot of this though, but would you like to?
This is also something where there's different, rules of what you can and cannot do depending what type of offering you have. If I'm doing a joint
Yeah.
venture agreement with you, or an individual, I cannot post targeted returns. I cannot post what I'm projecting, returns to be, for example. With WellShare, I can post targeted returns because we have an offering memorandum and we did a hell of a lot of work to get there. What you can do here is not the same what you can do here. So,
Yeah.
really understanding that, and just because you see someone do something does not mean that it's right. And I actually went to one of these securities commission things they had here in Calgary last year, and they are absolutely watching. They are watching Facebook. They're watching what people are posting. And so I think there might be more to come there, but I think hopefully this will make us all better. Like, we need to be doing better. Nothing is ever guaranteed. You know, don't ever use the word guaranteed. There is no guarantee.
Yeah.
We don't know what's kind of coming, right? Um, and so, but then also, on if you're a capital raiser, I've learned to, and even in sales, right? Like, building trust, you need to point out the good and the bad. You need to point out the pros and the
Ooh,
cons and the risks.
yes.
That's a really good way to build
Yes.
trust. Even if you're showing a property, right? Don't just point out the shiny things. Like, what do you see? You're an expert. What
Hmm.
do you see? There might be some risks with this property here, or maybe we should look into this.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. And so, what I hope we can learn from kind of the hardships we've seen in this space the last couple of years on the capital raising side is how can we do better? And I think leaders who are in this space can sometimes get a little bit nervous to speak up, but we're trying to lean into it and share what we're learning along the way. I mean, we don't have decades of experience, but we've also learned quite a bit in the last few years. So we're sharing what we're doing. I even wrote like a guide of like passive investing questions. Like, what should you be asking passive and, passive investment opportunities? What should you be asking these folks? Because we all know what to look for evaluating a property. Most people can learn that pretty tangibly. But this side, on the passive side, it's not nearly as clear as to what you should do to do due diligence. Everyone just says, do it, but like, what does that mean? And what do you ask and how do you do it and what do you look for? So that's what we've been trying to do to kind of, help with this kind of hardship we've seen in this space in the last couple of years.
Such a lot of great points there. I'm glad that you highlighted that. So potentially people who are listening to this and have been raising capital can just,
Yeah.
ensure that they're doing things a little bit more by the book because you are being watched. So yeah, yeah.
There is risk there, right?
Yeah,
And it also helps look at what other people are doing. Like, check out the offerings of other
yeah.
groups and what are they doing and what's working. Especially the ones that have been around for a long time, right? Like,
Sure.
decades long funds. That's who we're modeling ourselves after. They've been doing this for 30, 40 years. We're trying to, emulate what they're doing because clearly it's worked and we want to think long term. So yeah.
100%. 100%. That's the key thing, I think, to fast, quote unquote, fast tracking. Anything that you want to do is modeling the people who have done it.
Yes.
And then ideally you want to choose to model people who have done it the right way.
Mhm.
Um, and take it from there. Now, you kind of spoke about this, someone being suitable, suitable being the key word there. How do you personally distinguish between an investor who's technically eligible versus one who's truly suitable?
This is a really good question. So there's definitions in each country, at least that I'm aware of. Each country has their own definition of what makes an accredited investor or an eligible investor. Some countries have other terms, but it's a definition put out. So it's not my opinion whether you're accredited or eligible. It just is, and it relates to a few factors. One is your net worth and or your income, and you can also combine it with
Mm,
a spouse. So
yeah.
you can look it up and see what your. It's not something you get a certificate for, but it's your job as investor to know what classification you are. And then for something like WellShare, it's actually not even my job to determine if you're suitable. We have an exempt market dealer, and because we have an offering memorandum, like we talked about, we're actually required to have an exempt market dealer to be compliant. So, which is important because it's
Mhm.
not me deciding if you're suitable. They are going to independently decide what is suitable for you, and help you determine if you're accredited or eligible. But then also determine what a suitable size of investment might be. Just because you have 100,000 doesn't mean you should place it all with us. Maybe you should divide it 4 ways, right? So where people can kind of run into trouble is if there is no EMD involved because it's just a small group or whatever, there's no one independently asking these questions. So then it's sort of your responsibility as the general partner or the capital raiser to be thinking about this. And likely, if you're doing that, you probably are working with accredited investors or friends and family. Because the reality is, if you don't have an offering memorandum, the law states you should not be working with eligible
Yes.
investors in this country. It's that black and white.
Exactly.
And that's where people kind of, I think, have entered into the gray area there.
Now, I'm firstly curious with regards to all that you've done, because people listening can clearly hear that there's a lot that goes into this, right? And I'm sure we've just sort of scratched the surface. There's a lot more that you've done to get all of this set up and get it going. For people out there the entrepreneurs who treat this as a business and they want to distinguish between working in the business, working on the business, getting all of this done
Mm.
in the way that you did, what did your role look like? And what do you purposefully outsource? And maybe you were capable of doing it, but purposefully outsourced so that you could get things done and so that you could make sure that you are using your time to the highest and best use.
Yeah.
Because you have a lot on the go, you've built a lot, and of course you didn't build everything at once. You've built a real estate team that works and helps with investors. So you work in the business, and then you start working on the business, and then you start getting time back, and then you had a great year, gave you enough capital, gave you some runway to start working on the next venture, and you started working on that, in that. And I'm just curious as to like what those roles look like between working in the business, on the business, how they transitioned.
I'm a big fan of doing what you're good at.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the reality is you cannot do this on your own. There's just absolutely no way. So when we got this off the ground, there was kind of two key people. So Rodney, my husband, who we talked about, he kind of came in on the operations side in terms of essentially doing a lot of the stuff that I don't want to do. I know I'm very good at the acquisition side. I'm very good at the capital raising side. I'm very good at the relationships and the people. My favorite part of my job is just talking to people. Like that is really the favorite
Yeah.
thing that I do. And then the third component was on the financial component and compliance. So our CFO, Monique Verlon is her name. She's actually a past client of mine. And I've never met a more detailed person who is very good on the compliance side, but the financial side as well. Like, sure, I know how to do a cash flow analysis. I know how to do
Yeah.
I know how to do it, but not to her level, right? Not to her
Yes.
level. We've had lenders say they've never seen a spreadsheet like this before in any mortgage application because she's so thorough and so detailed. And so it like anything, it comes down to finding the right people, right? And sticking in the pieces that you're good at. And I still get caught in that sometimes, right? Like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this task? Someone is way better at this than me, likely, or can get it done quicker or enjoys it, and I hate it. So that was really important to me. And really, that's something I've been working on for a long time because of the kind of health challenges I have. I find if I start doing too much of the stuff that I'm not good at or don't enjoy, I actually have zero energy. I have no energy for like anything. So it really forces me to stick in what I'm good at and what I enjoy doing and where I'm most impactful. So you have to find the right people to fill those components. Like you need the operations, you need the financial, and you need someone who's going to kind of help drive the boat and keep it together as well. And that has the network. That was really it. I had that network piece, but I didn't have the other pieces. So I had to go find those individuals and make sure that we were all on the same page. So, and it's been a huge advantage in getting this thing off the ground. There's no way I could have done it on my own.
Oh, 100%. 100%. And that's what I was thinking, like while you're going through all of this, I'm like, I'm actually curious about that side of things because people don't see that, or they underestimate, the amount of work that goes into it and the value of building a team and a business around that. There's two key books, and I'm sure for the listeners out there, they've probably heard me mention these books independently, but two key books that come to mind while you're speaking about this is The E-Myth and Buy Back Your Time. Those are like two key books for building out a team, building out a business, because it's knowing your strengths personally, knowing where you lie. Are you the E-myth? It's the entrepreneur, the manager, the technician. Like, where do your strengths and your passions lie there? Outsourcing that, and then buy back your time. It's also for scaling a business from the ground up, from the administrative side to the managerial side to the market, like all of those things.
All of it.
And it's yeah. I don't know if you've read those books. You probably have, but
I have read the second one. So it's a constant challenge. Like, don't get me wrong.
yeah,
Anyone who's an entrepreneur probably has some sort of like brain that's constantly doing 100 things at once. All these ideas, and you have all these, we could do this, right? Like, there's always the shiny
yeah,
pennies, and we get excited. And so learning how to be a better leader is definitely something I have been working on. It does take practice, and it takes studying and learning and trying to be better, because when I'm a solo agent doing I had, it was just me, and I had some help on the like administrative side and support side, but I was doing a huge amount of volume on my own. I don't report to anyone. I was just doing my own thing, right? And but you can't go like that forever. Like, you cannot, or I could not.
yeah.
I would probably, I probably would be very sick if I did that. But I went super hard for about 5 years, like incredibly hard. And so in the last 5 years, really, I've been, and even especially the last couple of years, I've been be a lot more intentional about how can I be a better leader, listening and watching how other people lead and lead their teams, and what seems to work and what fits with me. So learning how to become an entrepreneur to leading a company, a solo entrepreneur to leading a company, there is a lot that has to change there in terms of our brain, because we are people who just get up and start doing it. And you can't just
Yeah.
get up and start doing everything. So you have to start thinking about how can you lead differently than how you just lead your own brain.
Oh, 100%, 100%. And so the E-myth, just for those who haven't read it, essentially what it sort of entails is, like, you'll have someone, for example, who's a good baker, and all their family members are like, you know what, you should open up your own bakery. You should have your own. And they do that, and they find themselves completely miserable. Why? Because they end up being the technician. They're good at what they do. They enjoy that. But when it comes to managing employees, when it comes to the entrepreneurial side, they're not good at that. They're not passionate about that. They're not interested in that. So they find themselves doing less baking and more doing all of these other things, and they find themselves miserable. So the E-myth just helps you sort of figure out where you lie in that. But then buy back your time actually gives you like strategic steps on how to grow your team, on how to effectively delegate, which is a key skill that you need to learn when you start leading a team as well. Is how do you delegate versus abdicate? How do you just, instead of just pushing something onto someone, how do you ensure that they know what to do, and how do you lead them from that standpoint? And then I also see it as like, and it seems like, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like this is one of the things you did. Well, firstly, the benefit of growing that network, of building relationships, gives you access to potential key team members that you can collaborate with. But you have different class of team members. The way I see it, you have like A class, and those are people that know more about this than you. Whatever the topic is, whatever they're doing, they just far ahead of you. You're not telling them what to do, they telling you what needs to be done. And then you kind of have like a B class. And again, I'm sort of, people may have their own rankings, but then you have like a B class where they have the work ethic, they have the drive. You still need to teach them stuff. You might know a little bit more than they do. And then like your C and D classes are like just people there for like the paycheck kind of thing. They're not really passionate or interested in what they do. That's kind of the way I mentally categorize it in my head. It might not be the most efficient way, but that's kind of how I see it. And oftentimes people focus on like the C, D class. How do I find someone to do this position for as little as possible? And I think, in my opinion, getting those A class, B class team members far out outweighs what you're paying them, because the ROI that they contribute to the team is far more effective than trying to get 5 CD class team members on your team as well. So I went off on a tangent there, but yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
One thing I've started reframing my mind around the last couple of years too is I've always said I want people doing what they love to do. Like, what do you like to do? That's always been like, what do you want to be
Yeah,
working on? Like, I don't want you working on stuff you don't want to work on. But so that was always there. But also leading in terms of like using moments where you would normally tell someone something to teaching something, or like if they ask you a question back, like get their opinion, get their thoughts, because it might be different than yours. It might not be your first instinct, doesn't mean it's wrong, but it's also building that sort of trust in them that you believe in their own instincts, right? So that's
Yeah.
been something. It's a small little thing, but again, that's thinking about longevity. It's not just thinking about the problem today at this moment, at this minute. It's like, how can we um, really empower you in your role, but also give you kind of the room to do your job. Like, we can't micromanage everyone, right? And I hate babysitting, almost to the point of where I was probably sometimes just not engaged enough with some, folks probably, but that's a little switch that I've been making that I think is working very well. And yeah, I want people happy to be here and excited to be, contributing. So
100%, 100%. Yeah, I have the same thing even with my team is, trying to, and I think if you can figure this out, it really helps trying to figure out what their goals truly are
yeah,
and have them figure that out because sometimes people don't actively know what that is. So figure that out and align that with the team so that you can help them achieve their goal. They can help the team achieve the shared goal. And it's a win-win. And while you were saying, there's one thing you mentioned there that also got me thinking about in the book, Buy Back Your Time. He mentions I think it's the 1-3-1 method, where you have for your team members so that you don't have to micromanage as well, or so that if there's a problem or an issue or something that could be done better, your team members like, okay, what's the one problem that we're trying to solve?
yeah,
What are 3 potential solutions? And then what do I recommend? And have them bring that back to you versus you telling them. I find that's also a pretty effective way to do it. So that was last year. That was like the book of the year for me because there was so many things in takeaways in there for me when it came to
that's good.
leading a team and building it out. But went off on a complete tangent there. The only reason why I mentioned this was because you mentioned like you have key team members who do things better than you do,
Yes.
and getting access to those people and finding and sort of coming together to create sort of a super team. So going all the way back to maybe someone listening out there is not that far ahead. They're still in the early stages, but there's so much benefits from going as hard as you can on building relationships and expanding your network
Yeah.
because you don't know down the line, like you said, it was one of your clients that ended up coming on and being in your team. You don't know down the line who you're going to run into and who you're going to end up collaborating with, whether it's raising capital or ultimately building a team. Because if you're treating this like a business, you'll soon come to realize you can't do it all by yourself.
Oh, absolutely. You just never know. You just never know where the opportunity to come or who you're going to need, or who you like working with. So yeah, that's so huge. And really try and do the right thing if something comes up, right? That might bring you another opportunity down the road. So always think long term.
Yeah,
Never cut the corner.
100%. And I think it's something you mentioned earlier on, which I didn't even really touch on
Mm.
or respond to, was mentioning the good and the bad. And, being as transparent as you can really builds trust and it gives you the long-term win always, in my opinion. Trying to hide those things, that really erodes the trust in your relationship. And you might get the micro instant win right now, but you're not getting the long-term win by being completely transparent. Most of the time, some people already know some of the cons, some of the risks. So you trying to hide that or bury that doesn't really show well for you. So be open. And it might seem counterintuitive or scary at first, but you actually come to realize like that's the best way to do it. That's actually how you win people over, is by being open. And then like, you know what? Speaking to other people, they actually don't say this. It might be the obvious thing that's unspoken, but just mentioning that immediately builds trust with other people. And
Absolutely. Especially when they're relying on you to be the expert in some way, right?
yeah,
They're
yeah,
trying to learn something from you that they don't know. You can't just give the fluffy stuff, right? You can't just sell the
100%.
rainbows. I mean, we all want that, but there's true risk out there, and every project, if we're talking about tangible real estate, has risks and different ones, and it's and then it's really aligning the kind of the amount of variables someone is comfortable with to strategy, right? If they're buying
Yeah.
hard assets, if they really don't like all these variables, then I do not recommend land development, for example. Or if you have never done a
Yes.
project before and now you all of a sudden want to flip a fourplex in 3 months, like, yeah, and this is not your personality type, this is going to drive you absolutely insane. So aligning kind of strategy and variables and with an individual and the pros and cons that you can point out and highlight about all of it, that is kind of really what it's all about, in my opinion.
Truly, I absolutely believe that. Just from you saying that, like the one thing that comes to mind is being bold enough to tell people potentially what they need to hear versus what they want to hear, you know. And as the expert, whether it's as an investor focused realtor, whether it's as the active investor, whatever that is, as the expert, and you alluded to this earlier on, or you mentioned this, is asking questions. So, you know, you're asking questions so you can better understand the situation, and then give them honest feedback or advice versus what you just agreeing with what they say. I think
Oh,
people
definitely.
appreciate and respect that a whole lot more. It goes a long way. So being bold enough to do that. I mean, in a tactful way though, but yeah.
And never assume. When you're talking
Yeah.
to a potential client or investor or something, like, never assume that you think you know what their priority is more than they do, because time and time again, it's not what I think it might be. Like, some people, it's, they
Yeah.
really need cash flows. People obviously don't care about cash flow. They care about, long-term growth and just parking their money in hard assets or whatever it is. You just have no idea what someone's priority is. So asking questions, being curious about them and what they're looking for. And maybe it doesn't align with what you have right now, but maybe it will in the future. Maybe you know someone or whatever it is. So yeah, being curious, asking a lot of questions goes a long, long way. Never assume who you're talking to, what they might be prioritizing, or even what their experience is, or anything like that.
Yeah. And I know you obviously know this, not only raising a bunch of capital, but even just going earlier on in your career, being in sales and being successful at that. Like, one of the key things, you'd realize, and probably one of the key takeaways outside of, I mean, there were so many, but is really asking more questions. You could be way more influential by asking more questions. And I found even early on in my sales career that was something that I wasn't doing enough of. As you can tell, I'm a host of a podcast. I can do a lot of talking. And I was like, I need to ask more questions. You just need to, because don't assume, just like you said, don't assume. If you're not asking enough questions, you're kind of assuming. So, you need to be asking more questions. That helps you. It really helps you with building influence. And when I say influence, I mean in an ethical
Right.
way, of course.
Yes.
Um, but I feel like we could honestly keep this going. There's just so many gold nuggets that you pulled out here. Okay, so I want to quickly jump to like one of my favorite segments, because we're running out of time, but I really want to hear your answer on this. So
Okay.
I call this time capsule. Okay, so let's just imagine you able to step into a time machine that allows you to go back and forth in time. Now, you can't change anything, but you can give and receive advice from your younger or older self. So going back just a few years ago to your 18-year-old self, what advice would you give your 18-year-old self with the knowledge, the experience that you have now? Now, this can be investing, it can be, real estate, it can be familial, it can be a combination of it all. What advice would you give your 18-year-old self with the knowledge you have today?
Oh, that's a big question. You know, I think, especially at 18, and I think women are maybe harder than themselves on this than men maybe are. I have an incredible I have an incredible work ethic, sorry, and have accomplished a lot since then. But I think the thing that I needed to really believe in myself then was, surrounding myself with people that respect me. I think I tolerated a lot of disrespect and just a lot of things that weren't good for me, right? And so the older I get, the less patience I have for that, and really being intentional with surrounding yourself with people that I want to be like, not with people who are trying to maybe like clamor onto me. And I think I made that mistake for a very long time. And taking care of a lot of people around me, which I still do and love doing that. But it was, a long time before I went and sought out people who I wanted to strive to be like. And I wish I would have done that a whole lot sooner.
Right.
Like I said, about 10 years ago is when I got intentional about getting out there. I really wish I would have done that a whole lot sooner and tried to, seek out people that I really wanted to emulate and be like. That would be my number one piece of advice.
Love that. If I were to, and correct me if I'm wrong, if I were to summarize that into like 3 words, it would be increase your standards. From the people that you surround yourself with, from the way they treat you,
Yeah.
just overall increase your standards. Don't just accept that. And I think over time, for most people, we get older and older, we actually realize we can increase our standards. Like we don't have to do things to impress other people. We don't have to accept the way people treat us. We don't have to um work with someone or have someone be inside of our circle. Just
Definitely. You choose who you surround yourself with, right? Uh,
exactly.
and that's really everything. Like that's really, really critical. So that's something I'm a lot more intentional about now.
So now, if we were to look ahead to your 80th birthday, what advice do you imagine that your future self would offer you at your present age?
Probably uh to try to be as present as much as possible right now. Not just now, but I think as entrepreneurs, we are, like I said, our brains are very active. They're busy. It is sometimes very hard to slow down and very hard to be in the moment and intentional. I have two kids. My son is 14. He's taller than me. He's looking down at me. My 12 this month. And so it's like, holy, like and we work from home. We spend a lot of time together. It's not like I don't see my kids a lot. I see them a ton, but I know that my probably biggest fear is not being intentional enough with my relationships that I care most about, that I'm close to. That'd be my immediate family. And it doesn't ever. It's probably never going to be enough. But I know there's days and weeks that go by, and I look back and I'm like, I probably could have been a little bit more intentional at certain times. So that would probably be my biggest piece of advice: is all this is great, all this is important, but those key people are really what it's most important for, and why life is so great. It's the people that you share it with. So being more intentional with that. I know that sounds very cliche, but it's true. It's absolutely true.
I fully, fully, fully agree on that. I think it's the, I mean, it's probably a struggle for every parent, but maybe even more so the entrepreneurial parent struggle. You have something that you build in, and that goes beyond just working a 9 to 5 oftentimes, right? So there's those working hours. I mean, there's some people that actually set hard stops and stuff. But for a lot of entrepreneurs, they can bleed into each other,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
Um,
harder when you get one
yeah,
too to set those hard stops, right?
it is. It absolutely is. And then as a realtor yourself, you know that as well, because it's like when the 9 to 5 is over for most people, well, you have clients that are now available that kind of need your help as well. So it's so tough balancing that. But it's so true though. I think it's a constant struggle, internal struggle that you have, is building for my family for the future and just for
Living.
positive impact on society. But then at the same time is balancing that with this time that's so fleeting with your loved ones and your kids, and you're constantly looking and you're like, oh my gosh, where's time gone? How did they get so big so quickly? And am I spending enough time? Because I know looking back on this, I'm gonna feel like I haven't regardless.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
absolutely,
Exactly right.
absolutely.
There was a couple years time there where I remember like being in tears, coming home yet again, missing bedtime. And so I didn't see the kids all day. I was gone all day, didn't make it home in time. And there was a point I was like, that's enough. Like I gotta stop. I have to stop. That was I was in this real growth mode, and that's important, but you can't do it forever. And I remember just there was too many times I was coming home upset because I missed it again, and that
Yeah.
guilt was really there. So the more established you get, of course, the easier it gets. So I think just making sure not to make the mistake that you can make those choices, especially the further along you get in your career. There's times it's crunch time, and my kids know that, and there's travel time, and there's all kinds of things. But also like letting them know what's going on. I mean, they're very proud of what we are doing here, and they're proud to be a part of it, and we share a lot with them. So not keeping them in the dark, so they understand, the time working is not a chosen time away. It's to build something
Yeah.
for us, for our family. So yeah, kids are very
Yeah.
smart. They're very smart.
They are. They are. While you're saying all of this, I'm just thinking this last week has been so crazy for me that, like, I think I only got to have dinner with my family Thursday for the first time last week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, nothing. And there was one day I had to quickly, I think it was on Wednesday because I had the event. I just got home from an inspection, and I literally just had to run in and run back out. And my 3-year-old daughter's at the dinner table there, and I hear her asking her mom, why does dad work so much? I'm like, oh my God. Oh my gosh, that's all they want. They just want your time. Like they, especially when they're younger, they truly don't fully grasp it. But my son at 6 years old, he definitely gets it better. But um, I think it's also easy as an entrepreneur to there's a finish line that we initially have when we get started, but that finish line just gets pushed and it gets pushed and it gets pushed. As we get closer to it, we build new goals. And I think even when you ultra wealthy and ultra successful, it's still easy to constantly have a new finish line and a new goalpost. So it's a constant struggle, but you're right, it does get easier as you get a little bit more sophisticated and you have a little bit more capital at your disposal to buy back some of your
And
time.
people, right? You have people, hopefully, that you're
Yeah,
delegating things to.
exactly.
Talk about.
And you still have to be purposeful about that.
Yeah.
So it's a true struggle. And this is why I like the flip side on both sides of the equation, because when you go back to when you're younger, it's usually something with regards to building for your future and taking action, taking risk. And in your case, which is a pretty unique one, like increasing your standards of the people you surround yourself with and basically what you allow people to treat you like. But then flipping it over to when you're older, it always comes back to really making the most of the and now. So no, honestly,
Mhm.
Natasha, this has been such an insightful, fun conversation. For our listeners out there, I would encourage you guys. I'm gonna leave all of Natasha's info in the show notes below. Go and follow along on her journey, um, so you can learn more about what she's doing. As you could make out, we could barely scratch the surface because there's so much that she's done. So the value doesn't have to stop here. Keep it going. Follow on social media. But Natasha, just for people out there who are currently driving and they're like, yeah, when I get home, I'll do this. Where's the best place for people to really follow along and connect with you?
You can find me anywhere on social media for Natasha Phipps. I should be pretty easy to find. For the real estate team, it's phippsgroup.ca. You can find us there. Wellshare.ca for the fund. And you can, reach out that way would be the best way.
Awesome. Well, I'll be sure to leave again for everyone listening all of that information in the show notes below. But Natasha, I really want to thank you for coming on and sharing. This has been truly fun.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
To our listeners out there, if you're looking for more valuable insights, be sure to subscribe. Share this with someone who can benefit. And as always, keep investing smartly. Thank you for tuning in to the Wealth Through Real Estate Show. If you want to learn how to take your business to that next level using leverage and the knowledge of your network, then you don't want to miss the episode with Natasha Fagali. This is your host, Alray Noble, signing off.